I would like to begin today's presentation with our primary webinar scripture, Psalm 139, verse 14, and it says, I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well.
Time was mentioned in the main episode. I felt it was important to explore this topic further. Giving time is a key part of the challenge of making positive changes. I thought it would be helpful for the experts to explain why it takes time. In today's episode, we will explore more about our habits and how we are able to rewire our brains. Most of the self-healing topics in this webinar series will include an extra video or two to watch, filled with other interviews from doctors, nutritionists, and practitioners. We'll begin today's episode with a wellness principle from a famous quote by Hippocrates. Quote, healing is a matter of time. You could probably say healing takes a matter of time. Let's break down the definitions of healing and time. Healing is the process of becoming well again, and time is a measurable period during which an action process or condition exists or continues. We run our lives on a timetable or schedule, but when it comes to wanting answers or changes to difficult situations we are facing, that's another story. We can get impatient or want to give up. Healing is inherently a process that unfolds over time. The time needed can vary from one thing to the next, and how you participate and put into action the steps needed to make progress. But does time really heal all wounds? Is there any truth to this? Well, here are a couple of quotes that may bring some food for thought here. Time may heal all wounds, but it does not erase the scars. And it has been said time heals all wounds. I do not agree. The wounds remain. In time, the mind, protecting its sanity, covers them with scar tissue, and the pain lessens, but it never is gone. The truth is, these comments have some truth to them. Your body has a good memory, as you will learn in this episode. As we live our lives, we are writing our own book, but there is hope and there is healing. Now, for the positive side of time healing. Time can help you process a painful event. Time allows for self-reflection. Time can help people make space for new activities and people. And time facilitates growth. Today's extra includes Dr. Caroline Leaf, another neuroscientist, who talks about habits. She will give you scientific strategies for building long-lasting good habits. Here is Dr. Caroline Leaf.
So think of mind spirit and soul as basically the same thing.
Wow. Okay.
And then you can look at mind has different layers.
Okay.
You've got your conscious mind that's operating right now, we're awake. Driving us, those are non-conscious, N-O-N, not unconscious. Unconscious is when you're asleep. Non-conscious is the most intelligent part of us. It's the biggest part of our humanity. A lot of people will think of that as being your spiritual level, and then your conscious being your soul level. All the experiences that you've ever had and been exposed to, every single experience has been wired into the brain by your mind and as a physical tree.
I have a very good friend I've been thinking about the entire interview who has a child that's just really had chronic struggles with mental health issues.
What we all need is to feel empowered and not to feel that there's something wrong with us. We also need to help our children develop psychological immunity, so not just immune system, and then allowing a child a space, no matter what they say to you, no judgment, no compassion, but saying, listen, I see how you're showing up, I validate, I recognize, let's work through this together. Here's a system that's scientific that we can work through together, and the key is empowerment. You have to get a person empowered to change their relationship with themselves, and when that happens, that's when the growth comes.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. I'm so excited about today because the woman sitting across from me is the definition of brilliant.
Oh, you're sweet.
It's just true. And she is always the smartest person in the room and never feels the need to prove it to you. And that's the real definition of humility and brilliance combined. She's a cognitive neuroscientist and a true mental health expert, and her work's made a huge impact in my life. And so, Dr. Caroline Leaf, thank you for being here today.
Oh, Ed, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I'm very, very flattered, very honored. Thank you. And I love talking to you. It's always just, you're an amazing interviewer. So
Thank you.
You pull the best out of me.
I love listening to you. She also has a new book out that you can pre-order right now, depending on when you listen to it, but you can order it at any time. But How to Help Your Child Clean Up Their Mental Mess, a guide to building resilience and managing mental health. Wow, is that a timely book? So let's start with some foundational stuff first. What's the neurocycle? Just so we set the stage for everybody, kind of foundational part of your work right now.
Absolutely. Well, it's based on 38 years of research, and I still do research, finding ways to help people to manage their mind to drive the neuroplasticity of their brain in the right direction so that they can then show up in life how they want to. That's probably the most simple explanation. So it's a system that helps you really get your mind where you want it, to get your brain and body and your life where you want it.
Does it help change their thoughts?
It changes your thoughts completely. It basically helps you find the thoughts that are the things that are holding you back, intrusive thoughts that are actually your best friend, because it helps you find the intrusive thoughts that are making you feel whatever in your life, from the traumas to the day-to-day struggles, and it helps you deconstruct and reconstruct them so that they don't influence your future in the wrong way. So you can decide how you want to use what you've gone through to help you in your future.
Oh my goodness. All right, this is going to go deep. Here we go, you guys. I'm going to give you the stuff I always wanted to ask you that I didn't get to ask you before.
Go for it.
What is a thought?
That's one of my favorite questions. So, Ed, I've got some props here to show us.
Please,
so
I love your props.
I've got a green tree and a little toxic-looking tree.
Yes.
And these are basically great analogies for what a thought is.
Okay.
So a thought is a cluster of information. It's a cluster of memories.
Okay.
And two types of memories. One are the source memories, like the roots of a plant,
Okay.
which starts the plant growing. And then the others are what you call interpretation memories, which we could say are the branches of the roots.
Okay.
So what happens is when when an experience begins, like for example, people listening to this conversation, as you introduce me, that's like a seed in the ground. And then as I'm talking and we're conversing, that's information that's coming at them and going into the root memories because it's the source of the conversation. While we're having this conversation and giving information to the listeners and they're growing the roots, because this is good information, so we'll hold up the green tree.
Okay.
That is, they are then interpreting what I'm saying according to their own unique way of thinking and feeling and choosing how their mind works, because this is all mind stuff, not brain stuff. This is mind stuff. And then the mind is then you basically, your mind interprets what you have heard in the root system into how you understand it. So the branches are branch memories or interpretation memories of what you've heard. So I'm saying stuff about mental health and thoughts and whatever, that's going into the root system. But each person listening, including yourself, is interpreting this in their own way to get their own understanding, and it's having its own unique impact. And then this information will show up in what they say and do and feel, their life, how they show up in their life. So thoughts are a real thing that occupies mental real estate. So I've got a model of a brain here.
Okay.
So with our minds, we are processing this information into the roots and whatever. But it's basically gravitational fields and electromagnetic light waves and auditory sound waves, and it's all this gravitational field, all these fancy physics things that then are, and then there's this sort of psychological mixing of all that physical stuff, which then goes into the brain. So the mind uses the brain. It needs a substrate within which to plant the experience, plant the tree.
Wow.
So it takes this we with our mind, put this into the brain then responds, and this is wired into the brain, and that activates the different parts of the brain. So that's why we say it takes up, occupies mental real estate.
When you look at the brain of somebody who's struggling with a mental health issue, which, by the way, that's a pretty broad term.
It is.
Right? It's a really broad term. But you look at the brain of someone who really struggles with depression, let's say. Are there parts of their brain that function differently? Is it a blood flow issue? Is it a wiring over time of the neural connections in their brain where they've just wired this thought and then it's got coated with this myelin? Or what do their brains actually physically look differently when you observe them?
So there's two parts to that answer. First of all, it's an excellent question. The first part of that answer is that your brain will change based on your experience. So It's not about us, it's about us in the world. You cannot divorce a human from the experience that they have and what it does in the brain.
Is it their experience, Dr. Leaf, or their takeaway or belief or story they tell themselves?
All of it. So it's a combination, it's layers. So the experience happens, our conversation could be the experience. That's then processed by the mind, which is this field all around and through us. When you're dead, your mind's not working. So that's an easy way to understand mind, because people say, what is mind? Mind is pretty much your aliveness, your ability to process, experience, think, feel, choose.
Can I ask this? There's no specific location, definitive location to the mind then, correct?
The mind, from what we understand from thousands of years of sort of looking at it spiritually, and then also 150 years of modern science, especially in the last few years, mind can be seen as a biofield. And it's got a very, a biofield in terms of gravitational fields, quantum physics, linking in with space-time, linking in with, all those complex concepts. And then mind needs a substrate. It needs something physical that it can actually connect with, and then you show up as the combination of mind and brain. The physical substrate then show up as how you function. So I mean, we're going to quite heavy science here, so I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. So stop me at any point.
Okay, I want to stop you at a point. I want to ask you a question.
Go for it.
You are a person of faith also. One of the reasons I love you is it's rare to meet someone who's so scientific that's also very faith-based. You truly are. And I had someone on my show, his name is John Gordon. He said to me, there is no mind, there's just the soul. So you called it an electrical field. So I don't know that there's that big of a distinction between the two things. Do you subscribe to that belief system that the soul has energy, and so therefore the subconscious mind, or the mind is this energy field that you're describing?
Absolutely. So let's look at it in different layers. Let's think of what mind is. Let's break down mind. Mind is an ancient term we could use it for spirit and soul. So think of mind, spirit, and soul as basically the same thing.
Wow. Okay.
And then you can look at mind has different layers. Okay. You've got your conscious mind that's operating right now. We're awake. Driving us, those are non-conscious, N-O-N, not unconscious. Unconscious is when you're asleep. It's a brain state versus a mind state. Okay. So non-conscious is the most intelligent part of us. It's the
non-conscious.
N-O-N.
Because I was going to ask you about this.
Yes. So mind has three levels: conscious, non-conscious. Non-conscious operates 24/7, super intelligent, never stops. It's on our side. It's the big thing. It's the biggest part of our humanity. Okay. A lot of people will think of that as being your spiritual level, and then your conscious being your soul level. If you want to sort of hook things with, there's different ways of looking at it. Scientifically, I talk about the non-conscious and the conscious, and then in between the subconscious, which is a bridge. And the unconscious, which is used very incorrectly most of the time, is just basically, as I said, when we sleep or knocked out or under anesthetic. So you've done something with the way that the brain's functioning when a person's alive to put them in an unconscious state. But the real stuff of life, all the experiences that you've ever had and been exposed to, from a from whatever time, whatever we know, whether it's just sort of late in the womb to where we're at now, every single experience has been wired into the brain by your mind and as a physical tree. So the mind has got these 3 levels, and the conscious, subconscious, and non-conscious are like, you can look at them from a psychological perspective, in that we are humans and we're thinking, feeling, communicating, understanding, all that, appreciating a rainbow, love, etc. All that's how our mind is experienced on a psychological level. But behind the scenes, it's all gravitational fields, electromagnetic light waves, quantum energy, space-time energy, aromatic rings. I mean, I can go all the way down to into Einstein's space-time dimension and all that stuff. And so we can really start explaining mind, and it's considered the hard question of science. And I never understand really why, because it's the most obvious question of science. Because the fact that you and I can have this conversation and talk about these things is our mind in action.
It's our minds working.
Our minds working.
And when it's a really good one like this, there's an energy connection that takes place as well.
Exactly, there's an energy connection.
About what we've got wrong about habits. Habits, there's so much misinformation around habits and incorrect information. So this whole neurocycle is about building habits, and a habit is something that produces lasting change. And we have easy habits to build, and we have more complex habits to build, like changes in mindsets. But as you work through the 63 days of the neurocycle, which is the system that I've developed to help you build habits, you're building a little habit every day. But it takes, for the neuroplastic effect to happen, it takes around about 9 weeks. So today, I'm going to be explaining how this works and giving you some examples and lots of graphs and everything to help you understand this in as simple a way as possible. So it is a bit sciencey, but this is like a baseline for understanding the concept of habits. And we don't understand the concept of habits, we're not going to affect changes that are sustainable in our life. And that's what's happening with a lot of mental health issues, is people don't know how to create sustainable change in their life. And this is what this session is going to help you understand. Okay, so habit formation, what we got wrong about habits is that habit formation, forming a habit, is this mindless automatic repetition. It's definitely not. To build a habit, there's a lot of intelligence that goes on in little tiny bite-sized chunks. So we're building little tiny habits every day that build towards a big habit. But little tiny habits don't build a big habit that becomes something solid that will change you in 1 day or 7 days or 21 days, which is so commonly thought. It takes at least 63 days. Okay, so you'll see why. So what's wrong is that habits form in 21 days. They don't. See, these are the things we've got wrong. That there's no time frame. Some people think there's no time frame, and it's just about, each day doing something little, and then it eventually builds towards something big. But that's in itself is not an effective way of approaching it. Like if it's something simple like flossing your teeth or something, you could get yourself into doing that fairly quickly. But when it comes to, you still got to practice it, you still got to build little habits, and it's still easy to fall out of it. So simple habits one can build in a slightly shorter time, but when it comes to like real stuff, it takes a longer time. So another misunderstanding what we've got wrong with habits is that it just happens one little daily practice at a time. It's with no random end frame to it. The little things it is a little bit every day, but it's got to build towards it's got to go into the right neuroplastic framework in order for it to root. Now, something that's happened that's very emotional. So there's a lot of emotional salience attached to it, like a trauma, an acute trauma that can become a chronic PTSD. So something that's big and makes an impression. All of that extra emotion and the drama around it and the trauma around it takes that experience and literally builds into a habit almost immediately, which is very interesting. So there's one circumstance under which a network can build very quickly, and that is intense trauma. Okay. And but to deal with that intense trauma, it's not just going to be one thing to fix it. And just the whole nature of how a trauma habit is built and a trauma experience is built into a habit is the fact that it is so in your face that you can't stop re-experiencing and thinking about it. And especially if the trauma is repeated, obviously every bit of repetition is making it stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. But the nature of all of the salience and the way the experience is wired in, to fix it, it's not going to go away as quickly as it came. So that if something happened in that moment, and it was maybe a moment of 20 minutes or something, it doesn't mean it's going to take 20 minutes to go away. But the nature of the trauma that making it into a PTSD means that it's very strong and established. But that in itself, even 63 days is not going to be enough to fix it. So the stronger the trauma, the more dramatic the trauma, the more rounds or cycles of 63 days you're going to need. So, for example, some of my patients who had abuse or who had suffered the death of a loss, suffered the death of a loved one, that kind of thing, where it's this intense war, incidents like that, those are not, they happen in the moment, they're dramatic, they embed and root across your entire network. due to the intensity of the salience aspects, the emotions, and so on. But they can take, they don't go away. Those kind of traumas get stuck. It's almost like tangled bushes in a forest, and in your brain, literally, it becomes this very entangled network that needs to be unpicked. So it's like almost like a hurricane bashing everything down. There's a big mess immediately, and it happened quickly, but it takes a long time to clean it up. That's actually a really good analogy. Just thought of that on the spot. Okay, so let's look at the next slide. The truth about habits is that neural bundles form over 2 to 3 weeks. And neural bundles, by that I mean networks. So these little neural bundles, so little networks that form in the brain and throughout the body. Each day they're forming and growing, but they grow into over 2 to 3 weeks into an established one. Then at the end of the 2 to 3 weeks, over the next 6 weeks or so, they then become stronger and more stabilized. So that's when you are trying to fix something, you've got to unlearn and learn at the same time. So the first 3 weeks are a combination. It's a learning phase where you are finding those neural bundles, unwiring them, and at the same time rewiring them, because you can't pull them out. You've got to fix and put them in the right way, kind of pull them apart and put them in the right, rewire them. That's the neuroplasticity aspect. And you're doing that with your mind. With your mind, you're changing the neural bundles in your brain. And that takes about 3 weeks. And then once it's built, then they get to keep, they're very vulnerable. That's a great way of explaining it too. They're very vulnerable at the 3 week point, especially when you're fixing a trauma, fixing a toxic habit, fixing something that's hard that you've dealt with. They're very vulnerable. So you need that next 6 weeks, you need that next 42 days to make them stronger and take the vulnerability aspect out of them. And it's only when that's removed, the vulnerability is out and they're strong, that's when they'll show up in your life as you changing, as you being able to cope with that you're not completely stuck in the flashbacks of that trauma and re-experiencing all the time that you get incapacitated. If you don't fix it, that's where you'll stay. But if you go through the healing process, then that this entanglement happens, but that's shrunk and the energy's been removed and it's not so powerful. And the healing, the healthy part's been changed. It's a healthy network, but there's a little part of the toxic one is still there, but it's very small, it's like encapsulated, it's small, it's lost all its energy and power. It's just like a faded memory. So you can remember there's still sadness, but it's no longer controlling you. And for something like death of a loved one, it's not going to go away in 63 days. It's going to take quite a while for you to get to that point, but there are things that you can do to speed that up, but that's not what this discussion's about. We'll do that in another session. So eventually the entangled bundles do disentangle and get weak and small as they lose their energy over the first 3 weeks, and then thereafter they've got to go from that vulnerable new little plant or that new little beautiful neural bundle into a strong one. So this helps us to evolve and not revolve. If we don't take that trauma or that bad habit and break it down in the way I'm saying and build it up into a good habit, we just get stuck in the bad habit. We get stuck in the trauma. We get stuck in those things that have caught us. And then we just go revolving, like the revolving door. Like a door revolves, you just go round and round and round, in and out, in and out, in and out. Maybe there's a tiny bit of reprieve, but you're going around. You don't want that. You want to evolve. You want to grow forward. And that's what the whole point of doing a very guided system over the five steps of the neurocycles, a system that I've developed that is based on how the mind drives neuroplasticity in the mind-brain-body network. It's a system for driving neuroplasticity, and you do that each day so that you can evolve and not revolve. And as you're doing it, you're unwinding all those little neural bundles. Okay, so habit formation is a very mindful practice. So it's not this mindless thing. It's mindful. So when we're dealing with a mindset change, a trauma, a toxic habit, it's very mindful and a planned and guided and sequenced way over a specified time frame, as I explained, based on neuroplasticity, and that's the 63 days. So habits are deconstructed and reconstructed in 21 days, but they're vulnerable. They need to be stabilized over the next 42 days. So this is just a summary of what I've said. So there's a time frame. This is the correct truth about habits. And this time frame is cycles of 63 days, and sometimes multiple are needed, as in the case of trauma. So a little daily practice at a time, or little daily habit, tiny little habit daily builds cumulatively over time, and very often people stop on the way. They'll stop at day 7, day 4, day 7, day 14, day 21, 42, 30, 36 to 42. There's certain time points that we call danger zones where you can feel like giving up, or you can feel like you've got it. And if you stop at those points, you can go backwards, and then you get very frustrated. So that's why you need to follow the cycle in order for, and it's a very logical process. It's a very cognitive process with some good body stuff that you can do with it to help you. Because remember, your body stores everything. Your mind, which is all around you, and your brain and your body. That's the network. The network's not just your brain, not just your body, not just your mind. 3 parts together, connected. Okay, so your mind's the energy, your brain is the neural networks and the chemistry, and your body's the cells and what's inside the cells, and that forms a network of memories. Okay, so simple habits like flossing or going to the gym are built into the mind-brain-body connection a little bit more quickly because they're not as complex. So simple things you could build in quicker. But for more complex habits like changing a limiting mindset or changing a trauma, that's going to require a minimum of 63 days to make it useful. As I said, extreme trauma, it's going to take, death of a loved one, for example, is going to take multiple cycles of 63 days. So in order for you to change, to get all those neural networks unwound and to build a new way of functioning and to help to, the grief doesn't ever go away, for example, but you learn to, the intensity of the grief reduces. And that's going to take time. That's directed neuroplasticity that's required. So a useful habit needs to be developed over time in a very organized way with this deconstruction and reconstruction in the first 21 days, finding the tangles, reorganizing them, cleaning them up, cleaning out the toxic energy and the toxic chemicals, rebalancing, etc. Tight gardening, literally, in your brain. And then you've got to apply the knowledge into action. And so, a useful habit needs to be developed through the deconstruction and reconstruction, as I described. Then you've got to apply that knowledge into action, keeping the momentum going, and that's what you're doing over the next 42 days. So there's these two phases. So here's now a graph to show you this concept of, and I call this the healing journey, and you'll be pleased to know that I'm writing a book with all this explained in depth. But if you are using the neurocycle, this is what you're going through. For those of you that, if you're not using the neurocycle yet and you're listening to this just on the podcast, the neurocycle is the system I've developed or what you do daily to direct the neuroplasticity. So it's the steps of how to do the little daily habit that build into the big useful habit in the 63-day or 9-week period. It's what you do daily for phase 1, which is the building phase, the deconstruction, reconstruction, and then the stabilizing, taking the vulnerability out and making it strong is the second 42 days. But it's an up and down journey. Every time you deal with a trauma, rewiring a toxic habit, rewiring something that's upset us, or it's maybe not a trauma, but just something that's been bad, maybe an argument or a pattern of arguments that you've got into with maybe your loved one or something like that. It's an up and down journey. So you can see there initially from days 1 to 12, there's very much an increased awareness. So at day 1, you're excited, and then there's this increased awareness. 12 days 12 to 14, we get what we call kind of like a mastery mirage, where you think, hey, you've got this now. And if you stop here, you're going to go backwards. But the temptation to stop can happen there. You can also experience a little bit of a dip at that stage as well. And then you get to days 21 to 28, and we call that the first danger zone. Because once you hit days 21 to 28, that is where you get where you've done the reconstruction, but it's still so vulnerable. You've cleaned up those little networks, the neural networks, but they're vulnerable and weak, and anything can just knock them. So you need the next 42 days. So that's the danger zone. And then you have another days 36 to 42. You get this at days 36. You get this. You can see the little guy with a super his jacket standing on top of the peak, just next to the light bulb. You get this increased insight in this time period from sort of 32 to 36, and that increased insight is an awareness of the change in you, an ability to look back and see the scope of what the bad habit or the trauma did in your life. So there's a level of maybe grief, maybe increased anxiety and depression, which are not negative, they're positive. They're a sense of grieving and a recognition of the scope because of your insight, like you're seeing more. So it's a very natural reaction to maybe feel a little sad or whatever, and that can lead to a bit of a dip. So days 36 to 42, there's this dip. That's where you see the little dip over there, where things can be very difficult. And because you're seeing what you've missed or what you could have done or what could have happened, and there's just a lot that's coming up, and a lot of connections are being made, and that can be very hard. And then there's suddenly this real climb to, you get through that dip, and then the vulnerability, there's a massive shift in the vulnerability every day from day 22 through 63. The vulnerability is getting less and less. But this up and down is all part of this growth. It's like healing. If you go for surgery, there's days where it's sore than others, or when you're working out at the gym, where you learn a new exercise, or you push yourself a bit harder, it gets sore before it gets better. That's the principle operating here. And then after around about days sort of 50 onwards, you see this beautiful climb where you've now built this into a habit that is useful. A useful habit means it's going to change your life. It's not just going to be, oh, I want that, I wish I could be like that. It's actually, you turn around and say, oh my gosh, I'm doing this.
I'd like to close with this verse, Deuteronomy 30, verse 19. I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, that both thou and thy seed may live. Until next time, live your best life now. Choose life and blessing today, and live free and to the fullest for His glory.
Let's connect just briefly before we close out for the day. Did you know that thinking was that important of a real thing? Next, did you know you could rewire your brain? Did you know that you could drive your brain? And finally, we think before we speak. So it would be good food for thought to reflect on what kind of mental real estate is taking form and being set up in your mind. I cannot end this episode today without including the scripture, which provides that hope that I mentioned earlier. As a believer, Philippians 4 verse 8 is a really wonderful verse for my mind to concentrate on and where I like to take my thoughts. And it says, "Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue and if there be any praise, think on these things." I invite you to take a closer look at what this Bible verse is talking about on LWC Moments YouTube channel in the Tea Time Treasures playlist called Biblical Meditations.